The quadratic formula, always a tricky concept to grasp at first. This is the first of 2 videos that I'm going to do on it. This was from my 2020 distance learning. I'm going to go through what the quadratic formula is and a couple of ways to remember it, as well as a couple of examples. Let's check it out. The quadratic formula is used when we're trying to solve equations like this. This is just our standard form of a quadratic equation. The quadratic formula is this, and you have to memorize this. It's pretty crazy, but just do your best. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And it's not over yet. All over, and you've got 2a on the bottom. Okay, so this is basically a set here. Without this, this doesn't really have any meaning. This thing here is the quadratic formula. Okay, so what you have to do is, you'll have a question, you'll have a quadratic equation, and you've got to get it like this first. You've got to get it equal to 0. And then once you do that, you can see what a, b, and c are. And then you take them and you put them into this formula here. So this is the quadratic formula right here. The quadratic formula is this big, nasty looking thing in the box. That is the quadratic formula. What does that plus or minus mean? Well, that means we're going to get 2 answers. One of them is going to be x equals minus b plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And the other answer is x equals minus b minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, it's just going to give us 2 answers. Okay, x could be that, or probably or is better. That's what that's saying. It's giving us 2 separate answers. So you've got to memorize this formula. It's pretty tricky. Let me show you a couple of things, and that might help you memorize it. Does this look familiar? If I cover up that square root part and the plus and minus part, what can you see? X equals minus b over 2a. Where have you seen that before? That is the formula for the axis of symmetry of a parabola, and they're connected, okay? The quadratic formula basically tells you where the 2 x-intercepts are. And the axis of symmetry is going to be right between them. Okay, so I won't go into that too much because it'll only confuse you. So that's one little thing. It's like x equals minus b over 2a, the axis of symmetry formula. And then you just have to remember this plus or minus square root bit. And now there's another way you can remember this formula, and there's a little song you can sing. This is embarrassing, but do you know the nursery rhyme, Pop Goes the Weasel? This is what, I'm not going to try and sing it, but this is it.
All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey stopped to pick up his hat. Pop goes the weasel.
Okay, so there it is. I remember the melody as a kid, but I don't actually remember the song that much. But you can sing this to that melody. So just think of that melody, and here it goes. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you remember that, you will never forget this. Okay, now I've got to admit, I did not come up with that. Some math teachers just have way too much free time. But anyway, let's try this. So we've got this in this standard form here. It equals 0. First thing we do, what are a, b, and c for this question? A is 2. B is 7, C is negative 9. Now we put them into the formula. Now what I'd suggest you do is write the formula out the first few times until you've got it memorized. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now we put the values in. Minus b plus or minus, and we put these in, b squared, 7 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. A is 2. And whenever you substitute in a negative, I'd suggest putting brackets around it. Now we're not going to do this in one step. Don't do it in one step, everybody. That will cause you problems and you'll get it wrong. Minus 7 plus or minus. Just do one thing at a time, and yes, you have to write out all this stuff each step. It's annoying. But If you skip steps, you are going to risk making a mistake, trust me. 7 squared is 49. Now be careful here, we've got a minus times a plus times a minus, so it's going to give us an overall plus. 4 2s are 8, 8 9s are 72. Here we go, it's starting to look a little nicer now. Minus 7 plus or minus the square root of, what's 49 plus 72? 9 and 2 is 11, 1 4 is 5, 1 2 1. All over 4. There we go, that's nice. Let's continue with this, I might bring it over here. What's root 121? That is a perfect square, that is 11. So it's x equals minus 7 plus or minus root 121 is 11. All over 2. Oh, sorry, 4. Now we get to here. Now we can split it up into our two separate answers. X equals, and we do the plus version and the minus version. Minus 7 plus 11 over 4. Or x equals minus 7 minus 11 over 4. And we get our two answers. Minus 7 plus 11, that is 4 over 4. Or x equals minus 7 minus 11 is minus 18 over 4. And we simplify these. X equals 1 or x equals 18 over 4, that's 9 over 2. Yes, minus 9 over 2. You can write minus 4.5 if you like. But like I said, improper fractions are preferred in math as we go into the hard stuff. Okay, so that is pretty crazy, right? 1 or negative 9 over 2. That is the quadratic formula. So you've got to memorize that and be able to apply it. 4x squared minus 7x equals 2. We're going to solve this one now. Now the problem here is that in our standard form? Remember, before we use the quadratic formula, we have to write it like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We want 0 on one side and everything else on the other. Do we have this equal to 0? No, we're going to do one step first. Move the 2 over there. Now this is going to become 4x squared minus 7x minus 2 equals 0. Now we're in this form. Now we figure out what a, b, and c are. Here we go. A is 4. B is negative 7. C is negative 2. Okay, and now we're going to put it into the quadratic formula. So this is our first lesson. Let's write out the quadratic formula again. X equals minus b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I did not come up with that, okay? I swear. Now we put them in. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 7 squared minus 4 times a, 4 times c minus 2. All over 2a, 2 times 4. Is that correct? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. If you don't think this is right, make a note somewhere, okay? I'm just going to keep going with this because this is when b is a negative number, there are so many things that can go wrong. Now let me show you what's going to happen here if I continue this. And this is wrong, by the way, but what's wrong with it? Can you figure it out? Is there one thing wrong with it, or two things wrong with it, or three things wrong with it? Have a think about it. Minus 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared is negative 49. Minus times a plus times a minus, that's going to be a plus. Cool. 4 4s are 16. 16 times 2 is 32. All over 8. Here we go, nearly there. X equals minus 7 plus or minus the square root of, so 4 2s are 8. 49 minus 49 plus 32. Okay, so 49 minus 32. 17. Oh dear, I've got the square root of a negative. We can't do that. Something's wrong. Okay, did you figure it out? There are two things wrong with this. Okay, and you've got to watch out for this. Always when b is negative, it causes so many problems. Here we go. First thing, minus b. If b is negative 7, what's minus b? What we need here is actually minus b. And what's b? b is minus 7. So it's actually a minus 7, which ultimately has to become a plus 7. That was one thing wrong. What was the other thing wrong? The other thing wrong is I substituted in b here. And when you substitute in a negative, put brackets around it. Okay, so this is negative 7 squared, so the negative should be getting squared as well. When the negative gets squared, this becomes positive 49, which means that is wrong. Okay, and that minus should be plus as well. 49 plus 32. 49 plus 32. 9 and 2 is 11. 1, 3 is 4. 80. Oh, that's a nicer number. Root 81. We can do that. There we go. That is now correct. Let's bring this up here and continue. Okay, so be careful when you're working. Double check each step. These are where the problems can happen. Here and here. It's always with this b value when there's a negative b value. Be very careful. Be careful. Ha. Here we go. X equals. I'm so funny. 7 plus or minus. Root 81, that is a perfect square. That is 9 all over 8. And here we go. So we're going to split this up and get two answers. X equals. What are they going to be? I'll let you do this and put your answers in the comments. Need a couple more steps there. What are they? These are rational, okay? It might be a whole number or fractions.